Welcome to the University of Maine College of Education and Human Development's Mentor-Teacher Information Session. Our goal is to provide you with the necessary information to support you while you are mentoring our undergraduate teacher candidates through their student teaching experience. As a segue into the presentation, I would like to share with you the theme of our college, which focuses on leading educational excellence through research, innovation, collaboration, and engagement. Our vision speaks to our leadership at the state, regional, and national level, and our mission articulates how we will get there with the constant reminder that reflective practice is what we all engage in as we work together to produce a new generation of teachers who are excellent reflective instructional decision makers. By the end of this training session, you should have a better understanding of our University of Maine teacher preparation programs, your role as a mentor teacher, the standards and proficiencies that teacher candidates must demonstrate a knowledge and understanding of, and the measures used to assess their performance during the student teaching experience. We'll begin by identifying the transition points within these programs. The first transition point typically happens by the end of the sophomore year. Education students must pass Praxis 1 and complete their criminal history records check, including fingerprinting, prior to submitting their teacher candidacy e-folio. If their portfolio is approved, they become a teacher candidate. The second transition point is at the end of their education semester, typically the semester just before student teaching. During this semester, most students are taking their methods courses and are connecting their learning in the field during their 60 to 100-hour field experience and seminar class. At the end of that class, teacher candidates are assessed on 8 of the University of Maine teacher candidate proficiencies through a portfolio submission. They also must pass the Praxis 2 content exam prior to student teaching. The third and final transition point is at the end of student teaching semester. During the semester, teacher candidates are in the field student teaching for a total of 15 weeks. Typically, teacher candidates are placed in one classroom for 8 weeks and another classroom for 7 weeks. Sometimes teacher candidates are placed in one classroom for the full 15 weeks, depending on the circumstances involved. Also during this semester, most teacher candidates are taking a student teaching seminar and are connecting their learning in the field to the theory they have been learning about and discussing in the University of Maine classroom. At the end of that class, teacher candidates are assessed on all 16 University of Maine teacher candidate proficiencies through a portfolio submission and through the feedback of you, their mentor teachers. Mentor teachers are encouraged to ask teacher candidates about their portfolios and their growth over time. You may have some very helpful comments and suggestions for them as they put together their evidence to document their learning. These portfolios are evidence portfolios, not interview portfolios. Our college expects that student teachers will demonstrate their knowledge and understanding of the 16 University of Maine teacher candidate proficiencies and the 10 Maine beginning teacher standards. These proficiencies and standards are noted on the next slide. You should also note that these will be revised for the fall of 2014 to address the in-task standards that have been adopted by the state of Maine. Because the college is accredited by both state and national accrediting agencies, we must ensure that our students demonstrate proficiency in both areas. As you can see from the chart, there is considerable overlap as the University of Maine teacher candidate proficiencies were created from both state and national requirements. As teachers in Maine, you are already familiar with the 10 Maine standards. As mentor teachers, your role is to become familiar with these standards and the University of Maine teacher candidate proficiencies so that you can help your student teachers move toward acceptable proficiency levels and assess them on each. This list can be found in the Student Teacher Handbook that will be given to you by your student teacher or mailed to you. You can also find the complete Student Teacher Handbook on the Field Experiences and Certification webpage on the University of Maine College of Education and Human Development website. During the student teaching semester, the University of Maine supervisor typically does several things. First, he or she tries to schedule a few times to meet with both the student teacher and mentor teacher to discuss progress toward goals and growth of the student teacher. Supervisors know how busy mentors are and want to make this as efficient and effective as possible. The purpose of the meetings is to help the student teacher recognize growth and identify needed improvement. The supervisor observes the student teacher about 6 times throughout the 15 weeks of student teaching. At least 4 observations receive formal written feedback. The other 2 may be an introductory meeting and an exit interview with the mentor teacher and the student teacher. Supervisor discussions with the mentor are extremely helpful as mentors observe and work with these students on a daily basis, so mentor input is critical. The supervisor provides guidance and direction to the student teacher, and, if needed, to the mentor teacher as well. Again, the supervisor wants to ensure a successful experience for everyone involved. The supervisor communicates with the student teacher regularly and with the mentor teacher as needed and as requested. The mentor may want to provide the supervisor with contact information to ensure there is no lack of communication when needed. An email address or phone number would be helpful. The supervisor also monitors student-teacher progress, as mentioned in bullet number 2, through observation and feedback, an online assessment at the midpoint of the experience, and again at the end of the experience, and finally with a written narrative evaluation that is considered alongside the mentor-teacher's evaluation to determine a final grade. And lastly, the supervisor helps resolve any issues that may pop up in the field. He or she is the person to address with any concerns or celebrations. As Dr. Hillman has so aptly stated, mentors can have a significant effect upon the professional development of aspiring young or mid-career adults in their profession. He goes on to say that whether a mentor's impact is positive or negative depends in large part upon how well informed and skilled the mentor is, and upon the mentor's commitment and availability. We encourage you to make yourself available to the teacher candidates who visit and work in your classrooms with you, and to commit yourself to helping them grow as young professionals. The College of Education and Human Development works with the school principal to place our student teachers with highly qualified mentor teachers. When placing student teachers, we look for mentors who have at least 3 years of successful teaching and a professional teaching certificate. Although there are many excellent first and second year teachers, it is unfair to ask new teachers to take on the responsibility of mentoring aspiring student teachers when they may be working on their own growth and development. We hope that mentors will have a working knowledge of curriculum, including initiatives like Common Core State Standards and the Maine Learning Results. We hope that they use effective instructional strategies, including response to intervention, have an understanding of and use assessment strategies that allow their students multiple ways to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding, understand or engage in professional learning communities where they investigate data to inform their instruction, and that they have at least an awareness of standards-based education. And lastly, we believe mentors should have a willingness to engage in mentoring activities with their teacher candidates, activities such as giving regular feedback, evaluating the teacher candidate's performance, modeling effective practices for the teacher candidates, clarifying their expectations and those of the college, recognizing the stages of development and understanding that teacher candidates are all on different learning curves, keeping it positive while providing good feedback for the teacher candidate's growth and development, and participating in the teacher candidate's exit interview whenever possible. All of these are things that will make the student teaching experience a collaborative one that can be enjoyed by all. Prior to the student teaching semester, the mentor should meet with the student teacher to get to know him or her and to find out more about what the student teacher expects from the experience. It is also a good time to share your goals and expectations and begin to find common ground. If at that time you have not already done so, you should submit your contract and your signed W-9 form to the Field Experience Office in Shibels Hall. The college will be unable to pay you for your mentoring services unless these documents are submitted. In the beginning, when your student teacher first arrives, please go over the blue student teacher handbook together so that you are aware of the expectations we have for our student teachers, our mentor teachers, and our supervisors, even if you are already familiar with the handbook, as these expectations may change from year to year. On pages 18 and 19, you will find a list of possible activities or events that you might recommend the student teacher observe or become familiar with. Please help your student teacher select the most appropriate ones and suggest others that may not be on the list. Your student teacher may need assistance in accessing these opportunities. The purpose, of course, is to help your student teacher become more familiar with the school community and professional responsibilities. Also ask to see your student teacher's professional development plan, or PDP, that was created in the previous semester to be carried out during student teaching. The PDP may or may not be appropriate for your school setting and may need to be revised with your guidance. Engage your student teacher early on in the experience through observations, assisting with lesson or unit planning, locating resources, and then gradually allowing him or her to begin taking over classes one or two at a time. If you are teaching an AP class at the high school level and choose not to give it over completely, perhaps you could allow for some team teaching. There is much value to the student observing and participating in the planning process and providing ideas and resources or assisting with some small group intervention. It is very important that secondary student teachers have responsibility at some point for at least 4 classes, not necessarily 4 preps. Throughout the experience, please remain in the classroom as much as possible, especially during the student teacher's first attempts to teach and manage the classroom. He or she will need your advice and feedback to help recognize what he or she did well and what needs to be improved. Your student teacher also needs to see you model the instructional strategies you might expect of them. It is okay to let your student teacher take risks, but please don't let him or her drown in the process. Whenever your student teacher is teaching a lesson, it is the college's expectation that he or she have a lesson plan to guide instruction. Please give regular feedback, either verbal or written, prior to and after lessons have been taught whenever possible. Upcoming slides will provide suggestions for conferencing and providing constructive feedback to your student teacher. After the 6th week of student teaching, you will be asked to complete an online assessment of the student teacher's progress toward meeting the University of Maine teacher candidate proficiencies, which incorporate the 10 Maine initial teacher standards. The University of Maine supervisor and the student teacher will also complete this assessment. The student teacher will compile all 3 sets of scores so that you can meet and discuss the ratings to determine progress as well as areas needing attention during the second half of the experience. Please know that you will be provided with a letter that contains your username and ID to access the TK20 system to complete the online assessment. When you log in for the first time, it will direct you to change your password ID. Be sure to write down your new password on the letter, as you will need it again at the end of the semester to complete a mentor-teacher survey. Keep this letter where you can retrieve it again. Your student teacher should already have completed his or her assessment before you complete yours. He or she can also help you access the system. If you have difficulty, you can contact the TK20 Help Desk through email, and you will be contacted and provided with assistance. As long as you hold on to your username and password ID, you should have no difficulties accessing this system. After the 13th week of student teaching, you will again complete the online assessment and meet with the supervisor and student teacher to discuss overall progress toward meeting the proficiencies. Your final task is to complete a written narrative evaluation to highlight your student teacher's achievements, progress toward meeting the teacher candidate proficiencies, and areas that need to be strengthened. Since this document also requires that you give a passing or failing grade to your student teacher, it is critical that it is completed within 1 week of the end of the student teaching experience. Your input is important and is combined with the information provided by the University of Maine supervisor to produce a final grade for your student teacher. It is our hope that you will be in constant communication with the UMaine supervisor if there are major concerns about your student teacher's progress early in the experience, so that appropriate measures can be taken to assist the student teacher if at all possible. During the last week of student teaching semester in December or May, all mentor teachers will be asked to complete a mentor survey in the TK20 system. You will need your username and password ID to access it. So it is important that you keep the letter that was mailed to you with that information. This survey will help us determine what is going well with our programs and what may need some tweaking. Your responses are very important to our program improvement process, and we appreciate the extra time you take to complete it. The next set of slides contains 10 suggestions for mentors to consider to ensure an effective mentoring experience. 1. Build a strong, sound relationship with your mentee. Build it on time, affirmation, mutual respect, open dialogue, responsiveness, and useful feedback. 2. Develop clear roles. Communicate clearly your expectations for both the mentor and the student teacher, including ongoing dialogue in which both gain from the experience. 3. Assess the needs of the student teacher at the beginning of the professional relationship. 4. Respect the student teacher as an active participant and reflective instructional decision maker. 5. Utilize all aspects of learning. 6. Actively engage student teachers in the learning process with opportunities to dialogue. 7. Act as a role model to demonstrate effective teaching practices. 8. Provide thoughtful sequencing of learning experiences from dependence to independence toward greater complexity. 9. Use the concept of teamwork in the learning experience. And 10. Ensure accountability. Know that what was meant to be learned was learned. The observation process also includes the pre-observation questions that you may want to ask before the student teacher teaches the lesson. For example, what student behaviors do you hope to see or hear? What do you hope students will be able to do following the lesson? In other words, what are the outcomes? What teaching strategies will you use? How are the teaching strategies, desired student behaviors, and outcomes related? Do you have any particular concerns regarding the above? Is there anything else you'd like to share with me before the observation? During the formal observation, here are a few questions to look for during the lesson presentation. What was the evidence that the student teacher used and understood the Common Core State standards, the Next Generation Science standards, or the Maine learning results? What strategies were used to engage the learner? Did the student teacher have control of the class? What was the evidence that showed the student teacher achieved the desired outcomes? What proficiencies were demonstrated through the teaching of this lesson? And some post-observation questions during your conference after the teaching episode might include: how did you feel about the lesson? What do you recall of student behaviors? What do you recall of your own behaviors and strategies during the lesson? How did your strategies and behaviors compare to what you had planned? To what extent do you feel the lesson's objectives were achieved? And what have you learned from this lesson? And finally, in Part 4, providing useful feedback and support. What is it that you can do to help your student teacher grow professionally? So be very specific and clear when you give feedback. Avoid ambiguous comments. Start with positive comments, and then offer suggestions for improvement. Refer to the Common Core State standards or the Next Generation Science standards or the Maine learning results with both positive and other comments. Ask your student teacher's understandings and feelings regarding your feedback. Again, to access the online assessment, you will need to log on to the TK20 system with the username and password ID that was given to you in a letter. Your account can be accessed at http://umaine.tk20.com. If your student teacher is unable to help you, please send an email to the TK20 Help Desk at tk20.support@umit.maine.edu. If you have any questions that were not answered by this presentation, please contact Pam Kimball at the Field Experience Office in Shibels Hall. The email and phone number are provided, and you can also check with the University of Maine Supervisor if you have a student teacher. Thank you for supporting our University of Maine student teachers in their quest for excellence in teaching and learning. Please go to the link below and complete the brief survey to help us comply with our data collection for accreditation purposes. The link is http://tinyurl.com/MHNY8GP